Now what I want to do is talk about the best practices. What are people putting into play? And kind of focusing it from a people, process, and technology perspective. So, competing on analytics. This was another, I guess, a study that was done by Tom Davenport, who co-founded the International Institute for Analytics. And this kind of, in my mind, it gets to the people aspect of things. So, and I think, the people aspect are probably the most important one because, people do analytics more than computers in a lot of ways. They're the ones that are really thinking about it. This was named one of the 12 most important management ideas of the past decade by Harvard Business Review. It was an article written by, for them in 2005. So we're going back 11 years. But yet, at the time, it was very key. And, championing analytics from the top was, obviously, once again, put on the top of the list. Getting data collection and analysis under one person, so you have the kind of the strength and the focus towards getting your data. Getting an analytics culture, having people kind of think more with analytics, hiring the right people and using the right technology for the job. But I wanted to kind of show a study outside first as well, and then now we're going to get into from the perspective, my perspective of what are some of those best practices. And these, I think, for the most part, came out of the discussions that I had with people that I've worked with over the years in setting up their own analytic departments, and a lot of history. I mean, really just kind of watching over time, how things had improved in their organization with analytics. In almost every case, there was somebody at the top, a VP, a key audit director that wanted to support analytics. And, it's usually somebody that has purse strings, and they really saw the value of analytics. I just found in most of these cases, the person that was really kind of championing it had a analytic background. So they were somebody that had done data analytics in the past, and now was in charge of the department and kind of remembers the days. And the reason I brought up my comment about, I started in 1993 and back in the mid 90s, again, it was really kind of cool at the time to play with computers in that mid 90 kind of era. That was our iPhone, in many ways. And if people back then are now people that are kind of running the department, when you think about the history side of it, those are the folks that tend to be the ones that are really kind of pushing things forward. The other aspect, though, if you don't have that person in charge, so there, as some people have said to us, the people that are running the department from a budgetary point of view don't get analytics, and they don't like analytics, and hence it makes it really hard to push analytic projects and training through them. So as Lee Iacocca said, you could have a brilliant idea, which is using analytics in your auditing work, but if you can't get it across, your ideas won't get you anywhere. And I feel that, for the most part, one of the ways to kind of build that business case is to attach analytics to a regulation or to a standard. And I'm going to talk about in a little bit about how that's changing in a good way, where, there are more standards and regulations where it's requiring analytics. Tracking cost savings can be a great way of proving analytic value, showing how you could audit more with less, get more done in the audit plan. These are all things that you could use in building a business case and then going to, we'll say the boss and saying, we really like to do this more. Now, in some cases, you could backdoor the business case and you could have a project called, embarrass the boss. Now, I wouldn't actually put this on a piece of paper or show this to the boss. But it's something where I've noticed in some companies where the VP had gone to a round table of other auditors, CAEs like themselves, and they were the only one that wasn't using analytics, and they felt, let's just say, a bit behind the curve. And hence, they were the ones that were kind of pushed forward by that meeting. And, I've talked to people that have departments now, full-on departments of, 4 or 5 people running data analytics all day long. This is within audit. And I said, what did it all go back to again when we thought about it? And it was really just like that roundtable meeting where the person was embarrassed and said, we're going to put some budget to this and we're going to get it going. And because once it gets going, I find that analytics starts finding things. It starts really kind of making improvements in the company, and it starts moving things ahead. I, just noted at the last there, I have a link to, my best audit finding ever. And it's when I found over $100 million around, just using one very simple analytic that I explained. And it was just so much money that it got everybody very focused on analytics, and we started having lunch sessions focused on training and analytics, and all of this came out of this one audit finding. So, moving past the business case, I think you have to work with people. And I think that, analytics and computers tends to be you think of it as more of a back office kind of operation. I'll say, I'm a very proud data geek, and maybe, data geeks need to kind of come out of that room and start meeting others. And I find that for myself, collaborating with external auditors and seeing where analytics could help them in getting more comfort in certain areas is a great way to kind of prove out the case. Collaborating with IT, and kind of noting here, by the way, that the external auditors can create a budget, because if you can show it's going to help, in your external audit, that usually will kind of get the people noticing and wanting to, do those types of analytic procedures to, kind of get the auditors more comfortable in a much quicker fashion, using some computer tools. Collaborating with IT, they're the ones that do have budget. I have noticed recently that some companies now have IT buying the technology for audit, and they're the ones that feel it's almost better that they do it and control it a bit. Makes their life a little easier from a security point of view. You can play to their ego, kind of talk about how, they're helping the organization get more controlled and be a part of it. And maybe even focus in on some of their areas, like some of the security testing, data privacy testing that's out there. That could be a way to kind of get things moving forward just by, working with IT departments. The other one that I've noticed is that working with the business process owner is another key area as well, because they have a lot of budget as well. And many times they need to be, I hate to say it, but they need to be embarrassed. They need to have something go wrong within their process to then have automation save the day. But there's nothing wrong with that, so I think as long as you can get them to see that there's a way to kind of create budget and hopefully save the day that way. So, kind of summarizing up, analytic benefits here into one of the study slides here, it really kind of comes down to doing more with less, I find, and I think it helps you to even find better audit findings. So, it allows us to do more audits. We have increased audit efficiency. We're able to review entire populations. We find fraudulent transactions. We're able to do more with less is actually one of the comments in here. So these are, the main kind of push for a lot of this. So, I find for the most part that, when we're kind of looking at this from a benefits point of view, that I think focusing on efficiency could help, and showing that your audit plan could be, made more efficient. You can get more done in your year with the same number of people is a great way to focus as well. Just kind of getting back to the International Institute for Analytics, they had this study up, and again, when you're kind of looking at some of the improper payment analytic benefits, this was from one of the studies that was done. This is from TechWeb Research, and reducing cost, improving efficiency and ROI of the investigator. We could get ahead of problems, ahead of the payment being made, and again, making us just more efficient, at finding things and predicting, what might go wrong next. So, and, kind of getting back into the presentation of some of the benefits of analytics, what I find is that, per the report to the nation, that surveillance really can do quite a bit to find fraud. So, fact that before less than 20% of people are using fraud surveillance, basically using analytics to find fraud, is a bit, it's too bad, because I think they would find a lot more fraud if they used analytics. And as you can see here, the management tip is the number one way that fraud is found, and that is about let's say 18 months and about $150,000 of fraud on average that is found through tip. When they go down to surveillance and monitoring, it kind of goes down by 2/3 in value and half the time. So now we're in like the 8 to 9 month scenario, and you're getting ahead of it. You're predicting it. Very much akin to what was being said in the IIA study, the II analytics study. And then kind of also going to some other studies out there. This was a Deloitte survey. How confident are you in using fraud analytics? And in kind of looking at this one, somewhat confident, 23%, not confident, 21%. Only about 20% felt they were very confident, which, just so you know, is very much in line with what we were talking about before, where 80% like don't use it and 20% do. So just as a note there. I talked before about regulation and standards. I have always felt that if there was a regulation that said you have to use analytics in an external audit, that would drive a lot more auditors to, in essence, have to use analytics in the audit process, and that would drive the internal audit process, the business process owners, everybody would start doing analytics more. I've been in some, projects where the external auditor said you have to do journal entry testing, and we're just not going to sign off on the job unless you do journal entry testing. And it's amazing how quickly that turns everybody into an analytic fan, and how quickly they want analytics. So the AICPA, it's a really great initiative. It was launched in I believe in 2015, but I was the Radar initiative being launched, which is between Rutgers University, head up by Miklos Vassarelli, and the AICPA, unveiling this research initiative. And you can take a look at that link if it makes sense for you. I know they're kind of reaching out to companies and external audit firms, but it's really it's uplifting to me to see, because they're focusing more on continuous auditing assurance. They're focusing on setting up a actual set of audit steps that people can follow, and would basically replace a lot of the type steps that you're doing now. And they even have data standards. So, you can go out there and get a general ledger data standard and take a look at what they thought, is the data that you should be downloading for the general ledger. So these are all, things to look for. And I wanted to provide some other links to some key documents. So I just talked about the GL standards, which is that one in the middle. Then there's the one on the right there, which is the continuous audit book, which was just released. I believe it was in December of 2015. And a lot of it is with, Rutgers' help, with Miklos Vassarelli's help. It's a really great, book on going back many years in all the things that he's done and Rutgers and other people have done with regards to continuous auditing. And then data analysis technologies, that GTAG 16 that I was talking about, it was written in 2011, mind you, but it is the number one needed thing in internal audit per the studies right now. So, definitely take a look at those as well. But these are ways of maybe kind of selling the concept internally by saying to folks, this is something that is starting to become more of a standard, and we really should be getting ahead of the standards. So, continuing on with the people aspect of things, the question I think kind of gets to, are we turning programmers into auditors or auditors into programmers? And I am finding some companies that are actually hiring data scientist people out of college and turning them into auditors. They being IT people will say, oh, it's just downgrading me to become an auditor, so that's their attitude. but I think at the same time, I find that auditors learning technology, especially with the audit software that's out there, that's very focused. It's not like you have to learn Python or SQL to become an analytic auditor. That I think that many auditors can become analytic. I want to say, take a look at me. I am a CPA, CFE. I am not a programmer, but I have been able to use these tools for the last 20 years, and really it's helped my career greatly. I find that, it does start with kind of hiring people with some experience, or just planning time for commitment, finding people that really want to do this type of work, that like technology. They may be the people that are always buying the newest phone or have the Apple Watch, and, they just love technology. They're a great person to kind of tap and say, hey, why don't we, have you spend more time doing it? At a minimum, you could make it part of their annual audit objectives. But, the study kind of showed, many of the studies show this, but the 2015 study had that 78% do not link performance objectives to the use of data analytics. So if we're not making it a part of people's career to learn analytics, it's just, unfortunately, it's probably not going to get the focus that you need. And I find it ironic because per that CBOC study, I misspelled it, the CBOC study there, that 64% viewed analytic critical thinking skills as the top skill for internal audit. And how are you becoming analytical and critical thinking if you're not using data? If you're just kind of relying on interviews and, maybe pulling a sample of information, you really should be using as much data as possible to make that critical decisions. And as a great COO I used to work for said, Rich, you have to quantify to me why we're doing this. And, nowadays with the technology, you can really quantify what you're doing, within minutes. So I also, just in the most recent internal auditor by the IIA, the auditor of 2020, February 16 article that was put out, MetLife, who I find, as I've talked to some software companies, they seem to have been ahead of the curve back in the 90s. They were the ones that were buying a lot of audit software, really getting involved. And it really just felt like, from some of the comments there, that they're really focusing on training people to be ready for like 2020, as opposed to just getting them ready for today. And I thought that was quite key as well. So, some of the questions we had in the AuditNet, who's training your auditor survey of 2015 that Jim had put out, a great survey. And, again, were you hired specifically for your audit technology skills? Almost 70-something%, no. So, really technology, as much as it's talked about, isn't really a key aspect of why people are getting trained. Now, what's a bit ironic, in a way, is the KPMG 2015 study. This is from, looking at CEOs and CFOs. 70% of CEOs say technology will have the greatest effect on the role of the CFO. But only half think, their CFO is doing a good job at it. Data analyst, 85% of CEOs say applying financial data to achieve profitable growth is the greatest strategic value a CFO can bring to the operation. So, I feel the more that you can use data, the more you can quantify and find value for your organization, I think you are going to stand out that much more. So, kind of now talking to the champion, and, I think at most companies, you're probably not going to turn everybody in the department to a data analytic auditor, as much as there's a push by CEOs for it, etc. And, I find, though, that there is a great effect, and this was from a study by Teammate, and, having a technology champion versus not, 55% that did not have a technology champion were only in the initial stages of analytics. 26% were in that 25 to 50% category. But when you look at the left-hand pie chart, you'll notice that improves greatly. That things, people are kind of moving to 25 to 50%, that are getting to more than 50% of audits, extensive use, etc. So they're moving it away from the audits that didn't work as well. What I also found really interesting in that study was that the people that were using data more were that key strategic player. They're the key member of IA management. They were kind of relied upon as a data person that they needed to, talk to. I found at least they were a technical expert or a resource to audit staff. That was kind of the second, focus point. But still, I find that in many ways that they were very key, and I think that that's a good to see. The only issue that I have with the champion concept is that it many times gets to a Lone Ranger kind of situation. And so the Lone Ranger means, you end up hiring like one person who becomes your technology guru, and then everybody else is, not really that good with technology, and they go to the champion to do everything for them. And what happens is the champion gets burned out, they may get a better opportunity elsewhere, and they end up leaving. And so that can happen. So I do believe that you need to kind of train everybody. I find that, having different training for each group of people, though, is what's required. So I would call it, opportunities or opportunity spotters and champions. And the champions are people, obviously, that are, the ones that you're spending a lot of time with. The opportunity spotters is everybody else, and at least they're understanding what the champion's doing, what they're going through. They can understand aspects of pulling data. They understand many of the commands that are being used by the champion. But, I kind of liken it to that, being Q. If you remember the James Bond movies, there was Bond and Q would make all of the toys for Bond. Q was really good at building the tools and understands how to optimize them, but James Bond was really good at kind of pointing and shooting the laser watch, and I think that you need both. I mean, I feel in this scenario, you can't have the champion do everything. And I think that the opportunity spotters need to be able to take what is being built for them and to utilize it. I find also communicating frequently, having some sort of a data analytics meeting a couple of times a month, it just puts more focus on it from a people point of view, but it also gets people talking. And I think that's, the key is just get them talking about using analytics more. In looking at the studies on training, that just-in-time training was kind of key. It was more key than, other trainings that was more focused, let's say, on just kind of learning what we might be able to use one day. Just actually learning on-the-job type training was more critical and got them to, a better place a lot quicker. So hiring a coach might be another consideration, especially for on the job. I do quite a bit of web type training with people where it's maybe just a half hour or an hour here and there. You could consider it almost technical support in a way, but I think it becomes more deeper than technical support. I think it's something where you're taking an actual business problem and working it through with somebody to really understand how to use analytics to make it better. And I think, having somebody that's quite good, could even be a champion within your company, and having that person play coach to other people in the organization, I think that's a really, that's a great working model. So kind of moving on, what did we learn, right, from the Who's Training the Auditor survey? From a technology point of view, 80% of people were not educated in college on audit technology. 40% consider them kind of in the late majority or even worse from a technology adoption point of view. 44% receive no training at all. But of the ones that did get training, it's in data analytics, so that's a good thing. And in kind of looking at leveraging data analytics, it looked like that for the most part the focus was more towards the champion to no one to less than 25% of people that were using analytics, and then the rest of them being more, let's say, opportunity spotters. And I still don't think that's a terrible idea. I just think that you do want to make sure that you have some sort of, as we'll say in a slide or two later, that you have some sort of backup plan for that if the one or two champions end up leaving the company. So looking more at kind of what type of training are you more willing to purchase? It's mostly, webinar type training where you get the CPE. It's also, annual subscription training with unlimited access. So there's a lot of people that are getting like audit software training, probably through their subscriptions with the audit software vendors. And, that seemed to be the top ones. The on-site training was sort of third in that scenario. And again, a very good option as well. So, Jim and I, as part of this training session today, this was our free training session, but it kind of focuses in on a longer-term program that we have throughout the year. We've been doing this now for 5 years, so it's time goes quickly, Jim. But we've been working on building a variety of different types of training over the years, and our main focus is that we built analytic training that was built on Excel as kind of the common learning ground, that is not focused on kind of having that Lone Ranger sort of concept. We have a link there where you could watch a 2-minute video on the training program that we have, and it kicks off in February, at the end of February 24th. And what we do is we have topics that are more on, say, visualization within Excel, but learning all the concepts of visualization and predicting using analytics. We talk about a couple of different areas where we're using a better fraud sampling approach using analytics. And again, the topics are kept in more of a way where you're going to learn something that you can apply, but it's also meant for the entire team to take. So it's more kind of geared at more of the group type subscription and training for people, because we want everybody to learn as opposed to just having one or two people become technical. And, in kind of further getting past the Lone Ranger beyond just the training aspects of things, have a backup. There cannot only be one. You need to have at least two people that I feel are, quite competent in using data analytics. I like to code as much as possible. I do a lot of scripting of my procedures, and that way, I don't even need to remember exactly what I did. And the quality is built in once. I mean, that way you're not sitting there every time ad hoc using Excel and hoping that it's going to work, every time. I'm not saying Excel is not a good tool to start out with, but I think over time you really should be scripting what you're doing. And by coding what the Lone Ranger is doing, you're able to save what they're doing. And further documenting, saving. I'm a big believer in videotaping, as you'll probably learn through this, but I actually videotape even work paper type submissions. So when the client gets the actual work that I've performed, I give them a video, and they will tell me that they watched that video 3 or 4 times before stopping watching it, because there's a lot of information put into that video. And I also find it's a lot more fun to watch a video than it is to read a document on how to actually work with work papers or run a particular system.